On the AM560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, and on TuneIn, iHeart, and on Odyssey. If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Boy, a lot of action in the Senate chamber yesterday between the Health Committee with Fauci and Walensky and the committee hearing on 1-6 featuring reps from the FBI and DOJ, and also Jerome Powell before the Senate Banking Committee for his confirmation hearing to a second term as Fed chairman, in which he said, among other things, I mean, it was sort of the same old on inflation and interest rate increases, but he said that climate change, on the issue of climate change, the Fed's role is limited but important. He also said, I think it's very likely that climate stress scenarios, as we like to call them, will be a key tool going forward. And that's as it pertains to bank supervision. Climate stress scenarios, a key tool going forward. So the Fed is going to wade into climate change politics and do the bidding of Elizabeth Warren as it pertains to the allocation of capital by banks? Question mark. To answer that question, we're pleased to be joined by Steve Moore, Wall Street Journal columnist, economist, and Trumponomics author. Steve, what about what Jay Powell had to say?
Well, good morning, Dan. Good morning, Amy. And, the number just came out exactly 7 minutes ago on the new inflation numbers, and they were pretty dreadful. It is now official that the inflation rate for the year 2021 came in at exactly 7%. That is the highest inflation rate in 40 years. It is a travesty. The Fed has been wrong on inflation now for 6 to 9 months. First, 9 months ago, they said there's no inflation. What are people talking about? Then they said when the inflation started to rage, they said, well, yeah, there's inflation, but it's going to be temporary. And then yesterday, Powell finally had to admit, when he wasn't talking about climate change, because, of course, he's a very, very world-famous climate change scientist. He knows so much about that issue. He did say that, well, now we have to worry about, quote, entrenched inflation. Entrenched was the word he used. This is quite an emergency we have right now. We cannot have another year of 7% inflation. The Fed has been way behind the curve. They should have been raising interest rates, starting mid last year. They're going to have to raise interest rates at least 2 or 3 times this year, and we'll see if that tames the inflation. But it is absolutely maddening that there are many people, apparently Jerome Powell now, saying that the Fed should have a third mission. They should have one mission, which is stable prices, keep the dollar stable in value. That's why you have a currency, so that it retains its value. But then they have a second mission, which is to grow the economy. I don't understand how you grow the economy with the money supply. But now they want a third mission, and that is to change the temperature of the planet.
Well, and then also prices have been rising faster than wages.
That's for sure.
By a factor of 3.
That's a problem.
Right about that one, Amy. Yep, that is a huge problem, and you just nailed it, Amy. So prices were up 7% for the year. Wages were up about 4.8%. By the way, 4.8% number for wage gains is usually huge. Yay!
But there's nothing to celebrate because you're spending it all on higher prices for meat and gas and everything.
That's right. So in fact, what this means is that in 2021, workers got poor because the purchasing power, what they could buy, was rising. In other words, the prices were rising faster than their pay checks, and so it's a pretty ugly picture right now, Dan and Amy, and I don't see any strategy for dealing with it. I mean, again, yesterday, Joe Biden was saying, "Pass my Build Back Better $5 trillion spending bill." I mean, does that make any sense when we have 7% inflation already?
Well, and does this make any sense? The Biden administration announcing Monday that it's reversing the Trump administration's plan to expand leasing on the 23 million acre National Petroleum Reserve in Alaska. would close off development on about 7 million acres by reverting to the 2013 management plan. So that's another hit to domestic oil and gas production, thus higher prices at the pump.
Yeah, you know what? I have an item in our hotline this morning that shows a chart that in 2020, for the first time in 50 years, the United States actually was a net exporter of oil and gas. We were actually exporting oil and gas on net, not importing it, which, unless you're over the age of 90, that's the first time that's, happened in our lifetime. And so, really great news that we had finally gotten to a stage where we were energy independent. And then you look at what happened in 2021, and we actually became a massive importer of oil again. Well, gee, why did that happen? Oh, maybe it's because Joe Biden has declared war on American energy. So we're producing less oil, less gas. And now how pitiful and pathetic is this, that now we have an American president has to go to the Saudis and beg them to increase their oil production when we're not producing it in Alaska, Texas, North Dakota, Oklahoma. We could be the world's energy supplier, and instead we are now getting on our hands and knees and asking OPEC to increase their output. I mean, again, you can't make this stuff up. It is so stupid and dangerous.
Well, and just to your point, for emphasis on inflation, you had an op-ed in the Journal from Tom Sargent, and who's a Nobel Prize winner in economics, NYU professor, basically saying that, yes, the Fed is not taking the threat of inflation seriously enough. They write they and Silber, most market participants have downplayed the possibility we're in a new monetary and fiscal regime, one in which policymakers don't worry enough about large deficits and excessive money creation and new purposes like addressing climate change. We're underappreciating this paradigm shift that they're suggesting is real.
I'm with Sargent on that. I think he's exactly right. I think the Fed, it is pitiful, when you have the Fed talking about climate change, when they can't do the one thing they're supposed to do, which is get inflation under control. So shame on him. I think Powell was a terrible choice. I told the president that in the Oval Office. I said Jerome Powell is going to come back to haunt you. And of course, Biden wants to reappoint him because he just keeps flushing more and more money into the economy, as if somehow all we have to do is turn on the spigots of the money supply and we're going to get rich. Gee, that really worked well for Venezuela and Argentina and Mexico and Zimbabwe. So it is a frightening situation. I hope the Fed takes this report that happened today and starts pulling back on the money. I want to mention one other thing, guys. You're there in Chicago, all around the country. I was in Florida a couple of days ago. I'm back in D.C. All people are talking about is what the hell is going on in Chicago. Why in the world have you surrendered your schools to the teachers' unions, and are the kids back in school today?
Yeah, they're back. They just left because I'm doing the show from home. Got them off to school. Yeah, 5 days. For what? I mean, they gained absolutely nothing, the CTU, from doing this. And they actually, Mayor Lightfoot's crediting herself and Pedro Martinez. No, it was the teachers themselves. They weren't getting paid, from what I heard from my teacher friends. They went back because, no, they're not getting those 4 days paid. And they said it was worth it. It was worth it to get N95 masks. Give me a break. That's all they got, and they would have gotten that without going on strike.
That's absolutely right.
Hey, when you were in Florida, did you get one of those new Ron DeSantis Escape to Florida, the Lockdown Libs Tour T-shirts that he's selling?
I saw a couple of them, and Florida, it's so interesting. You go to Florida, and people are happy. They're getting on with their lives. People are wearing masks, and people are doing some social distancing. But the stores are open, the restaurants are open, people are getting out. And then you go to the blue states like Illinois and New York, and it's like you're living in the prison. And I just do not understand why it is that we as voters, and I'm from Illinois, so you know this, so I say we. Why have we surrendered control of our schools to teachers' unions that don't want to teach? I mean, they're the most radical militant union in the country. Mm-hmm. They don't. I love, Randy Weingart. We teachers are the heroes of the. It's like heroes. No, we've lost a year of schooling. It's done incredible damage to our children. My opinion is, if they're going to strike illegally, because you're right, Lori Lightfoot said it was a legal strike, fire them, get rid of them, do what Reagan did, he fired the air traffic controllers, get people in front of those classrooms. Our kids cannot go another day without schooling, and they should make those 4 days up too. I hope they're going to make those 4 days
They're
up
not.
that they lost.
Yeah,
They're just
we
not going to get paid. They're not going to make it up
They're
because
not.
nobody wants to extend the school year. And Mayor Lightfoot, she could have done something, filed an injunction. It was a breach of contract, but she didn't do it because she's squishy. And she needs their votes because she actually thinks she's going to win next year for re-election.
Yeah. Steve, we'll add your voice to our voices in the wilderness that amount to not a whole lot here in Chicago. I wanted to get your.
It's that the teacher unions own the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is a fully owned subsidiary of the teachers unions, and they won't stand up to them. Why don't we put children first?
I'll take that as a rhetorical question. Kevin,
I wish we could.
House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy gave an interesting interview to Breitbart News recently, in which he said, and I hope he sticks to this when he's speaker come next January.
He will be, yeah.
The U.S. Chamber of Commerce has no place in the modern Republican Party, and when they're back in power, the chamber is not welcome back.
Wow.
Good.
Wow. I did not see that.
Yeah.
Are you sure
His
it's an
beef with
accurate
them.
quote? That doesn't sound like McCarthy, but
here's what he said. Here's what he said.
Wow.
The chamber left the party a long time ago. In the last election, the chamber supported Democrats. The chamber gave a higher score to Democrats who were voting for this policy because they signed some letter and then voted the opposite of what the letter that Kevin Brady, who was chair of Ways and Means, brought the tax cuts. He said if special interests are the American public, they'll have, if their special interests are the American public, then they'll have a say. But it's the American public we're going to listen to.
Fantastic. Good for Kevin McCarthy. I mean,
long time coming.
Not only did the chamber back, I think it was 22 Democrats, and if it had not been for the chamber, Nancy Pelosi probably wouldn't have the gavel today. But they also backed one of the worst massive spending bills in American history, the sham $1.9 trillion and $1.1 trillion so-called infrastructure bill, which is just a bunch of green energy crap and giveaways to corporate America. No, I mean I'm with McCarthy. I mean that group does not represent small businesses in America anymore. It doesn't. It represents a few big, massive, corporations. And they don't stand for pro-business policies, and they're not for free enterprise, so screw them. I'm with McCarthy on that. Good for him.
I am too. An encouraging note in advance of the takeover come November. Steve Moore, economist, Wall Street Journal columnist, Trumponomics author. Steve, thanks as always.
Okay. Have a great week.
Thanks, you too. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
You've made the switch, and it feels so good. You've switched to Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
If you're self-employed and purchase your own health insurance,